So here's a price chart. So what we see here is, and this only goes up to 2007, I'm afraid, but that's the latest I could get. You know, so the blue line is the fair trade minimum price. Now I should have said to you that when the world price goes above the fair trade price, the fair trade people pay the higher price. So it's never a disadvantage to the farmer. So this is the world price. You see most of this period is below what fair trade is paying. And when it goes above, some spikes here, fair trade just tracks it anyway. So for the farmer, you're never going to lose out with this model. And there's the other type of coffee, Robusta coffee. This is kind of cheap coffee. And again, you can see, blue line, light blue line is fair trade minimum price, and the wiggly line is what's going on in the, what they call the spot price, the market price you would get if you weren't fair trade most of the time. You know, sometimes big gaps. You know, imagine down here, you were a non-fair trade coffee producer. You were selling, you know, selling for 30 cents, 30, 40 cents a pound, as opposed to, you know, $1.10 for Robusta coffee. And that's a huge difference, just imagine. You can't live on that. Here, your family is starving, right? So, so it's a huge safety net, if you like. They also do other things. The fair trade labelling guys, the first set of groups, quite a cool thing, they certify places that support fair trade. Some of you may have heard of this. There are fair trade towns, fair trade places of worship, fair trade universities, I don't know if you are one here, where according to a set of criteria, you know, how much fair trade you sell, blah, 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 you can get a kind of stamp of demonstrating your support. And these have been very successful. You know, 4,000 churches, 800 fair trade towns around the world, 120 universities certified. So this has been a big, people have got behind this in a big way. And there's the world's first fair trade town was in Garstang in Lancashire, way up in the north. So this has been another side of what they do. So really they're focused on this, you know, social enterprise action is the flow model, the first labelling model. Okay, it's got a fair price and the things we've just been talking about. So it's strongly development driven, and it's to do with, above all, building a kind of business model that can support producers and manufacturers get out of poverty through giving them a better price for what they create and grow. So their focus, though, has been, you know, at the other end, at the consumer end, the focus of this part of fair trade has been really strongly on expanding and mainstreaming fair trade. So getting it into Sainsbury's, getting it into Tesco, getting it into big, you know, sort of high street shops to grow the amount of sales. It's a very simple logic. The more we sell, the more help we can give to producers. So our focus has got to be to sell more and more. And the way we're going to have to do that is to talk to mainstream players. Otherwise, you can't do that. You can't go big unless you're in Tesco. You can't go big unless you're in Asda. Okay, so that's been their strategy, and we'll come back to that in a minute in terms of possible issues. So is it successful? Well, you know, in some ways it's a drop in the ocean, but this is the 2009 figures. 2010 figures are not out yet. They'll be out shortly. It's Fair Trade Fortnight in a couple of weeks. 800 million of sales in the UK in 2009. It'll be certainly over $1 billion in 2010. How far much over, I don't know yet. So, you know, is that a big proportion of the coffee market? What do you think? How much of the UK coffee market by percent do you think is fair trade? Any ideas?
Maybe 10%.
Yeah, it's not a bad guess. It's between 8 and 10%. Yeah. So it's not insignificant, but I mean, still 90% isn't. So we shouldn't get carried away with this. So it's making a big difference to farmers on the ground, but is it yet the norm? No, it's not. It's not more than 50%. In any market. I mean, the biggest market share, what do you think the biggest market share of fair trade is? What's the product that in Britain that has the largest percentage of fair trade? Any idea? Think about when you go to the supermarket. Any ideas?
Flowers.
No? Good guess, but no. Pardon? Bananas. Absolutely so, yeah. More than 25% of all bananas sold in Britain are fair trade now. Some places like Sainsbury's only sell fair trade bananas. You can't find non-fair trade bananas at Sainsbury's. So that's been a huge difference for banana growers in the Caribbean and in parts of Latin America. Okay. So on the global stage, is it making a difference? Well, these again 2009 figures. So certified sales about 2.2 billion. That's 47% growth. It's growing fast. So you can see the kind of numbers. 6 million producers, 60 countries, over 3,000 products you can now buy with a fair trade label on it. And in terms of extra income, in 2009, more than £200 million of extra income went to farmers thanks to the fair trade model. Cafe Direct alone gave back 16 million extra pounds to its coffee growers. You know, and these figures don't necessarily themselves sound huge, but if you think of farmers whose average income every year might be only a few $100s, these are huge differences for their lives. So it's very important to remember that. Even though it's less than 0.01% of world trade, it's fair trade. It is minuscule compared with global trade. For these producers it makes a big difference, and I've seen that on the ground many times. Okay, so I just said mainstream has been their big push for the labelled fair trade stuff, the flow label stuff. So you can see some of the things they've done. You know, 9.5 million units of fair trade cotton went into M&S in 2009. Tate and Lyle have switched all their own label sugar to fair trade, a whole category switch. All of that is fair trade now. Sugar's a big deal. More than 6,000 farmers in Belize have benefited by Tate and Lyle turning their sugar fair trade. Cadbury, even though they've been bought by evil Kraft of the US, are still sticking by their commitment to continue to support fair trade chocolate and to its cocoa connections in Ghana, Crapper Cocoa, and even Nestle, again, you know, normally a pin-up for being the evil empire, have turned some of their Kit Kats fair trade. So interestingly not, I think it's the 2-finger, not the 4-finger Kit Kat for some reason, presumably because the 4-finger sells more, I don't know, some weird thing, I don't know what. Go and look at your Kit Kats. One of them has it and one of them doesn't. Who knows? But at least they're showing a small commitment. So this is, you know, this is a huge mainstreaming success. But of course the question is, when you start playing with these guys, when you play with Nestle or Cadbury or Tate & Lyle, you know, what happens to other parts of what you're trying to do with your model, particularly the kind of political stuff, the social change stuff? How does that fit with Nestle? Are they really interested in that kind of stuff? How do you continue to be sort of politically campaigning if you're having to do more and more trade with the big players? Another example of mainstreaming, there she is, Hermione. So People Tree, and I should declare an interest, I'm on the board of People Tree Clothing, I mentioned them earlier. We did a tie-up with Emma Watson to do a collection of clothes that Emma designed, which has been very successful. So it's another example of, this was from the photo shoot for her collection, of how, you know, how it's getting mainstream. You know, people like Hermione are getting interested. Why is it interesting to retailers? Well, because you can make money on it. This is a kind of different story. We're nearly there, by the way. You've been very patient. I've only got a little bit more to say. We can have a conversation together, hopefully. But I just got to cover a few more things.